Great. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
All right. So, can you share with us the mission of Partners for Home? And how do you all differ from different housing adjacent related agencies in Atlanta?
Sure. So Partners for Home mission is to create a coordinated crisis response system to end homelessness in the city of Atlanta. And the reason we're different is we were stood up 10 years ago by the city of Atlanta as the quarterback, coach, whatever metaphor you want to use, to lead the community, convene the partners, convene both the public and private sector to create a coordinated strategy to reduce and end homelessness in the city of Atlanta. So we do not provide any direct service, but rather our job is to work alongside of those partners to coordinate them and align and leverage resources to scale housing solutions.
So we now have a new presidential administration in Washington, D.C. And how has that changed your approach to your mission in Atlanta? And can you share if there have been any sort of changes in funding that you all have experienced over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, as of Thursday night, the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development released our annual competitive application for funds and has completely dismantled and turned on its head the way in which we have traditionally funded supportive housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. They are shifting away from the housing first approach and forcing communities like Atlanta and over 350 communities around the country to utilizing federal dollars for temporary solutions only. And so we all, both locally as well as nationally, all across the country, are scrambling right now to avoid true catastrophe. We are, as a community, looking at the potential of about 600 households that are currently, were already designated as permanently disabled, who would never be able to go out into the market and sustain rent and obtain a full-time job on their own, who may be facing homelessness in our community in the next year or so.
Oh, that's awful. So, how are you all adapting to this new reality since the affordability crisis in Atlanta has become so stark?
I mean, we were already, as you alluded to, in a crisis moment, locally and nationally. Homelessness has continued to rise, and the direct corollary there is housing affordability and the availability of it in a given community. We know, and evidence continues to suggest, that homelessness is a housing problem, full stop. Of course, there are individual vulnerabilities like mental health and addiction and low income, education. All of those factors impact an individual's likelihood of falling into homelessness. However, a community's availability or lack thereof of deeply, deeply affordable housing requires fewer and fewer vulnerabilities of the individual to fall into homelessness. In other words, that is the reason why we're seeing sharp increases in the number of people who've been becoming homeless for the first time, and the number of people who, in fact, don't have those significant vulnerabilities, because we are experiencing the evaporation of deeply affordable housing across our community.
All right, so how, you say that you all don't provide direct services, but can you talk about how you are working with those agencies that do provide direct services, and how are you sort of making sure that they're not operating in their own silos? Like, how are you helping them to communicate with each other and so they can share what they need and, how they can work together to, help people who are unhoused?
Yeah, one of our key functions, as I said, is to coordinate and align the system. So we work alongside all of our homeless service providers, soup to nuts, whether it's shelter providers, outreach teams, transitional housing, permanent housing providers, and everything in between. Through work groups, committees, through our governance structure, to drive change on, sort of a sub or individualized basis, if you will. So we have a committee for young adults, we have a committee for families who are homeless, committee for homeless veterans, et cetera. And our goal is to really encourage those providers to think a little bit more broadly than their individual mission. So my mission might be to serve women with infants who are homeless, We really want to encourage those providers to think a little bit more broadly about how do they impact the system as a whole at helping us reduce and end family homelessness, as an example.
Okay.
Similarly for veterans and for people who are living outside. So we want to bring all the outreach partners together to ensure that they're coordinated geographically so that our entire city has coverage from an outreach standpoint.
All right.
So those are some examples of the way in which we work alongside with our providers.
Right. Can we switch gears a little bit to talk about the Atlanta Rising program? I understand it's a goal to help find permanent shelter for people who are unhoused. How many people and / households have been helped so far? And do you all have an overall goal? And do you have a loose timeline as to when you would like to sort of complete that, your mission with that program?
Yeah, Atlanta Rising is our largest campaign ever to support the goals of our current strategic plan, with the key goal of ending unsheltered homelessness in the city of Atlanta. That sounds pretty ambitious, pretty daunting, and it is, and it requires a certain level of investment of our community and buy-in and support from stakeholders across our system. It's a $212 million campaign that has 4 key pillars. One is a focus on prevention. So for the first time, going upstream to try to turn the faucet off, if you will, to try to reduce the amount of inflow of people that are coming into our system on a daily basis. So we're going to begin with some partnership with Cisco Technologies, who've been investing in this space for some time, to go upstream for the first time to try to prevent people from coming into our system. Additionally, the campaign includes scaling housing. So that has always been our North Star and our primary focus, which is how do we develop more housing faster at scale for people who are currently really stuck in our system, but for these housing interventions will not be able to exit homelessness on their own. That includes a partnership with the mayor with the Rapid Housing Initiative, developing 500 units by the end of this year of permanent supportive housing. We launched that with the first refurbished shipping container community called The Melody that many may be familiar with on Forsyth Street. We've since purchased 3 additional properties that are now online that were turnkey. We're developing 2 modular sites, and we're doing a ribbon cutting for the Waterworks site, which will deliver 100 units of supportive housing on December 3rd of this year.
Oh, December 3rd, okay.
That's right.
And it's right around the corner, Waterworks, right?
That's right, yeah, it's 17th and North Side. So incredibly exciting to be able to deliver a very high quality product in fantastic neighborhoods with amenities that are safe, where people who are experiencing homelessness want to live, just like you and I. With those same key objectives. And then the last pillar of Atlanta Rising is a targeted focus on folks who are unsheltered, recognizing that our unsheltered population is extremely vulnerable and really needs targeted outreach support to get off the street and into housing. So our approach is direct from the street into housing. We are starting with a focus on downtown, not because of the World Cup, but to leverage the World Cup and the interest that our community has around this issue. So to date, the milestone is house 400 people by the end of this year. We've rehoused 219 individuals to date, and we're well on our way to achieve that 400. And our goal is to rehouse all unsheltered people in the downtown area by the World Cup by June.
All right. So you mentioned affordability as a factor that could, I guess, increase some person's chance of becoming unhoused. What are some other factors that you think would contribute to becoming unhoused as well, aside from affordability?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, one, I want to underscore affordability is the primary driver. When you drive around Atlanta to neighborhoods that have long been deeply, deeply affordable, those units are evaporating everywhere you go. Infill lots in those communities are being developed with $500,000 homes and up. And so that is, in fact, the primary driver. I think the other key things that we really struggle with as a community, we are a very resource-poor community. We have not expanded Medicaid. And unbeknownst to many, and the average person doesn't realize, that people who are low income do not automatically qualify for Medicaid here in Georgia. We refuse to expand Medicaid, and many communities around the country use Medicaid as a payer source to provide supportive services. It's also the entryway into care, into medical care, into behavioral health care. We've done some qualitative analysis of those drivers, and some of the things that came up was lack of access to behavioral health care. Georgia ranks almost the lowest in the country in access to behavioral health care, and we feel that acutely here in Fulton County. Fulton County is the only county in the state, along with Haralson County, that does not have a dedicated community service board. That's the state's mechanism for providing indigent behavioral health care to people who are uninsured. So we are really lacking access, basic access to things like behavioral health care. Trauma and violence is another factor among people who are experiencing homelessness that often drives them into homelessness. And then the trauma of experiencing homelessness and the inability to access care often prevents them or hinders them from being able to get out of homelessness.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you all so much for being here. And if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the Axios Atlanta newsletter. You can go to axios.com/local/Atlanta, and you can sign up there. And you can get my face as well as Thomas Wheatley's face in your inbox every weekday morning. So enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you all at a future event. Thanks a lot.